Nate Edwardson, Wiki, Craig Ritchie, Talking Elite Fitness, Brian Spin, Sevan Matosian, Andrew Hiller, Clydesdale Media. Apologize for the guy from Europe. What's his name? Jason CF Media.
Where's he been?
Let's talk about CrossFit. So I guess my absence over the last couple of weeks hasn't gone completely unnoticed. But before I was distracted by hearing my own name, we would have noticed that they were listing off a number of people that are creating conversations and content in and around the world of CrossFit, which is a good thing. Well, let's talk about that, and I'll also interweave into the conversation why I haven't posted anything over the last couple of weeks, why that break was actually longer than I planned it to be, and maybe a couple of revelations I had over the last couple of weeks. But talking about conversations within and around CrossFit, if we want CrossFit to grow, we need people to be talking about it. The more people that are talking about CrossFit, the more eyeballs we can get on the methodology and the sport, the more people might think about starting to do CrossFit, or the more brands might think about investing in CrossFit, whether that's sponsoring an athlete or a competition. No brand is going to look to throw money to something if they think it doesn't have any chance to grow, or even worse, if it is dying or dead. But of course, it's not just about money coming into the sport. It's not just about bringing in new people. What about those of us that already do CrossFit, that already follow the CrossFit Games season? It can actually help us. The more information we have about athletes, the more we know about what's going on behind the scenes, the more invested we can become in the sport. Or at least that's how it should work in theory. But is this always the case? Well, clearly not everyone is enjoying the online CrossFit experience. And we can see this by looking at Nikki Brazier's comments to Lauren Khalil on her new show, Death By, that is part of the Talking Elite Fitness brand. So congratulations, Lauren, on the new show.
What would be the impact if all athletes made their videos public for the community to weigh in on? 1 minute on the clock. Nikki, we will start with you.
I think this is really hard. Like I am kind of doing this and being like, I think we should kind of let it happen, because on the one hand, like the internet is just such a garbage fire, and I hate the hate that exists out there. And I hate the armchair experts and the people who really make it their mission to, I mean, everybody can have an opinion, but there are some people who really make it their mission to go out there and like personally attack people.
Now, of course, in this example here, it's very specific. They're talking about athletes making their videos public when they are submitting them for things like the quarterfinals. But I think we can take the principle or the feelings behind people just commenting on media content around CrossFit, and we can probably apply it to other areas within the CrossFit world as well. And it raises a couple of questions. Does she have a point? Is she specifically talking about Andrew Hiller? Does this mean we're not allowed to say anything negative or bad about CrossFit? And how does any of this link to my not posting videos over the last couple of weeks? So I already said that if we want CrossFit to grow, we need more and more people to be talking about CrossFit. And there are a number of people that are doing this from the outside media perspective, and I'm not going to be able to mention everyone. And if I don't mention you, it's nothing personal. There's just too many people doing it, which is a good thing. So when we think about outside media on CrossFit, we might immediately think of kind of news outlets like Barbend, Morning Chalk Up, or Barbell Spin. But looking closer at what individuals are doing, we can see we have people that try to give us information and context through data. People like Mike Halpin, Brian Friend, Tyler Watkins. Speaking of Tyler Watkins, we could think about fantasy drafts. So we've got lawn chair leaderboarding, fantasy fitnessing, those that are trying to make watching CrossFit more enjoyable. So we're not just invested in the top 5 people. And then, of course, if we want to cheer on an athlete, we probably want to know something about them. There's only so much we can learn from a post-event interview, but then we have these long format interviews on different podcasts like Clydesdale Media or Peter at Coffee Pods and Wads, Talking Elite Fitness, to name a few. And of course, we cannot forget Sevan. Whether you like him or not, we cannot deny the number of athletes he has introduced us to. Not just through his podcast, but there are a number of athletes that we would consider OGs, household names within CrossFit, that we wouldn't have got to know if it wasn't for the behind-the-scenes videos that Sevan was doing. And then you're going to have people that focus on one geographic region and highlight the athletes there. For example, here in the UK, I think of Tom at Chalking Fitness, who's highlighting what's going on in the UK CrossFit community. But the same is happening, of course, in other parts of the world too. And of course, we've got other people that are creating content around CrossFit. Andrew Hiller, the Buttery Bros, Craig Ritchie. Now, of course, they've got very different styles. We might not like all of them, but they are all creating content around CrossFit that keeps people engaged even during the off seasons. And I don't want to pigeonhole any of the people that I've just mentioned, because actually what you'll find is they're all wearing multiple hats. They're doing a number of different things in and around CrossFit to help build it up, whether that be the methodology, the sport, the individual athletes. But if the goal then is to build up, does that mean we can never say anything negative about CrossFit? Well, of course not. In fact, as those that do CrossFit, we know better than anyone, don't we? If the coach is correcting us, it's not a personal attack, it's because they've seen something we can improve. And many of the people that I've mentioned, they do just that. I think about someone like Brian from Barbell Spin, fantastic video about Africa and the strength of field calculation, and a follow-up interview as well, just highlighting a problem with the maths and the calculation, the way the system worked. And speaking of Brian's, think of someone like Brian Friend. He'll be vocal if he sees something at a stage in the competition that doesn't work, doesn't feel right, but he'll also propose possible solutions or ways CrossFit could do it differently that would work better. So the goal is always that. It's not just to point fingers when they're doing things bad, it's to try and help them find ways to do things better. Now, going back to Nikki's comments, I'm assuming many people will think, yes, she's speaking about Hiller. So was she? Well, I don't know. You'd have to ask her. But I do know if you speak to Hiller, he'd tell you his goal is the same as the Bryans I've just mentioned, to strive for improvement within CrossFit. And he's not going out on some personal vendetta against individual athletes. And he has also spoken out about things like the adaptive division in CrossFit. So it's not that he's just going after high-profile, big-named athletes. And whether you love him or hate him, if you watch his videos, you have to admit that he will put in a tremendous amount of research to gather data to be able to offer evidence together with his critiques. Now, of course, some people won't like this and they're going to feel personally attacked by Hiller. And of course, an argument that people could make in reply to this is, well, if people don't want to be targeted by Hiller, they just have to make sure that their movement standards are beyond reproach. And I suppose if they all start doing that, then he has got a point that he's making things better. Now, of course, there will be other athletes that could care less what Hiller says, and they will just ignore him because it's not an issue for them unless CrossFit starts to take action. So up to this point, I think we're all good. Everything's positive. We've got all these different voices. They can all elevate one another, build each other up, promote the methodology, the sport. So what's the problem? Well, why don't we just stick with Hiller for a little bit longer, but let's incorporate the Batman persona.
What gives you the right? What's the difference between you and me? I'm not wearing hockey pads.
Yes, hockey pad Batman. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that Hiller is the cause for this or that he's created these people, but he's definitely something that they can use to justify their actions. Now, if you speak to Hiller, he will tell you that he views the athletes as blobs. That blob's not doing this movement correctly, or that blob's making a mistake. It's nothing personal. But just because it's not personal for him doesn't mean there aren't other people that do have personal grudges and issues with athletes that can conveniently use Hiller or others as a way to target them. As I said, when Hiller puts up a video, he'll do his research, he'll have information there, he'll have clips, examples, so he knows what he's talking about. Unfortunately, that's not the case for everyone. So it seems now that if an athlete puts up a video or if CrossFit puts up a video, it doesn't take long before people start calling them out in the comments section. Unfortunately, often they are missing key pieces of information or they're just wrong in what they're saying. At times we see them just tagging Hiller or throwing up the bats. And maybe other people will jump in to say, look, you don't know what you're talking about. This isn't what you think. Sometimes even Hiller will join in the conversation and tell these people that, no, it's absolutely fine what's going on in the video. But unfortunately now, it's not just commenting on athletes that are submitting videos that are part of the competition that have strict movement standards they need to adhere to, but it just seems whenever anybody posts up a training video, even if they're not a competitive athlete in any way, well, then someone's got to comment. They've got to let them know what they're doing wrong. I saw Mike Halpin put up a story the other day where he was commenting on this because a number of people had been sending him messages or saying that he needed to speak to Hiller when he posted up a video of a set of back squats. So while there are definitely people that want to offer constructive criticism within CrossFit for the goal of building it up, there are other people.
Some men just want to watch the world burn.
Now, at this point, we might be thinking, look, online trolls have always been a thing. People are always going to be commenting on videos. Why am I bringing this up now? And this is where it links into my absence and why I hadn't posted videos in a couple of weeks. So I took a week off because I had some things that needed to be done. They had a very specific deadline. They were very important. And I just had to shut everything off for a week so I could focus on getting these things done. So during this time, I was still training. I was training at CrossFit Bath. I was still speaking about CrossFit with the members there. I was really enjoying the training. I was really enjoying the conversations I was having. It was all positive. And because I was having such a good time and I really wasn't missing the online side of things, 1 week quickly rolled into 2, 3. Now it might even be 4 weeks. Now, of course, I was always intending to come back and be keeping an eye on things and talking about what's going on, but it did get me thinking about other people, those that are not yet in the CrossFit space. Now, maybe there are people that go to the local box, but they just don't follow the sport side of things, or it could be people that are new and they want to see whether or not they want to get involved in doing CrossFit or watching CrossFit as a sport. But if they start looking into it and everything is negative, what a bad job CrossFit is doing, how terrible are these athletes that are all trying to cheat, are they going to stick around? Maybe they're just going to stick to doing the classes with the people they know at their local box, or maybe they're just going to go and use their time to do something else. And don't get me wrong, we have the other side of it as well. You've got people that are so positive about everything CrossFit, they are almost blind to the faults that CrossFit makes, as if CrossFit is this infallible entity, and how dare we criticize them for anything they do. And of course, that's wrong as well, because if we can't point out when things aren't done well, we cannot expect them to improve. But we don't want to just tear things down unless we also want to help build them up better. Now, at the same time, I actually had a number of people reach out just to see how I was doing, as they'd noticed I hadn't put up videos, so maybe the online community isn't such a terrible place after all. And at the end of the day, we all benefit from being in the CrossFit ecosystem, so we definitely don't want to do anything to end that. And I get that it can be incredibly frustrating when we see CrossFit potentially making the same mistakes over and over again, or not learning from mistakes that they've made in the past. And maybe some of the things they say and do can be irritating, and maybe that can play a part into why I had such an enjoyable time when I wasn't listening to any media, not just from people around CrossFit, but even from CrossFit themselves. But I'm back now, and there are definitely things I want to talk about, but I do also want to find that nice middle ground. Yes, there will be criticisms, but maybe we can find some positives too, and definitely the goal is to build up and not to burn down. And of course, selfishly, the more people in general there are that are interested in what's going on in CrossFit, well, probably the more people might actually watch these videos.